How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Mike from Seattle, and today we're going to be comparing the financial order of operations from The Money Guy Show to Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Now, for those of you who don't know who Dave Ramsey is or who The Money Guy Show is, I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction just to kick this series off. So Dave Ramsey is an American personal finance personality, radio show host, author, and businessman. He's an evangelical Christian and hosts the nationally syndicated radio program The Ramsey Show. Ramsey's written several books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Total Money Makeover. More recently, Dave Ramsey has taken to YouTube. Well, I guess since 2013, so it's not that recent. However, if you take a look here at the statistics that I pulled up, he's got 625 million views across all videos on his YouTube channel with 2.2 million subscribers. That's nothing to laugh at right there. Brian is the founder and host of the award-winning Money Guy Show and has been broadcasting for over 15 years. He's been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Yahoo Finance, Forbes, and more. He's also been recognized by Investopedia as one of the top 100 most influential advisors. Brian Preston's co-host, or as I like to call him, B-Money, B-Money's co-host is Bo Hansen, Bo Handsome. Also a host on The Money Guy Show, he and Brian Preston share guidance and insights on topics ranging from clipping coupons to saving for retirement and everything in between. He's been featured in and contributed to Fox Business, Bankrate, Yahoo Finance, Forbes, and many more. Together, these two started The Money Guy Show on YouTube, at least back in 2011. And you can see right here on the statistics I pulled up that they have 15.9 million views across all videos that they have, with a total of 127,000 subscribers. So both of these individuals are famous and have been doing it for a very long time when it comes to giving personal finance advice to you, the average individual. Dave Ramsey's been doing it for close to 3 decades. Brian Preston has had his podcast since 2006. So really what I want to do today is talk about Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps and compare those to the financial order of operations that the Money Guy Show purports. We're going to take a look at them one at a time. We're going to compare and contrast, and I'm going to give you my analysis as to what I think is actually better. So who am I? I'm a regular guy at the age of 18 years old when I graduated from high school. I started working on a farm, and all day I would listen to talk show radio, and Dave Ramsey was one of the shows that I would listen to. Thanks to Dave's guidance, it kept me out of debt at a young age and kept me away from making stupid choices with my money. Now, as I got older and things like YouTube became more popular and podcasting, I branched out and started to study and learn more from other mentors. That's what eventually led me to find The Money Guy Show. And as a lifelong Dave Ramsey lover and now a Money Guy Show fan, I wanted to compare and contrast these two financial gurus' takes on their game plans for your financial success. So let's get into it. Dave Ramsey's first baby step: save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. In the first step, your goal is to save $1,000 as fast as you can. Your emergency fund will cover those unexpected life events that you can't plan for. And there are plenty of them. You don't want to dig a deeper hole while you're trying to work your way out of debt. So essentially, he wants you to have $1,000 set aside in a bank account so that while you're working on baby step 2, which is paying off all of your debts, if some unexpected expense comes up, you'll be able to handle it without having to go back into debt to pay for whatever that expense was. Makes sense, right? Real quick, before I talk about the financial order of operations, I'm going to make it known that I couldn't find from them, included in their free content, a good explanation of what each financial order of operation step was. It seems like that content is behind a paywall, which is actually surprising considering how much free content they put out. But that's their prerogative. They can charge for you to see it or not. Either way, this is straight from their website. They've outlined what their financial order of operations are, and I found on Reddit a more concise breakdown giving us a little bit more detail. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between the Redditor post and their actual website. So financial order of operations step 1 is deductibles covered. If I take a look at the financial goals, we go over here. Deductibles covered. This could be healthcare, car, and home insurance. For example, $500 for your car insurance deductible, $500 for your home insurance deductible, and $1,200 for your individual health insurance. You want to have all 3 of those things covered. In other words, enough money set aside in a deductibles emergency fund that you can cover them if something unexpected happens. So where Dave Ramsey wants $1,000, they're recommending that you have the combination of all of those deductibles covered. Now, those deductibles are probably going to total up to over $1,000. In this example we have right here, we're looking at $2,200 saved in an emergency fund. And I can say for certain Due to inflation that we're experiencing right now and how much prices have raised in the last 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know when Dave Ramsey first authored his baby step plan. But I can guarantee that $1,000 worth of purchase power back then doesn't go as far as it does today. So potentially, Dave Ramsey should probably update his starter emergency fund from $1,000 to $1,500, maybe $2,000 to make sure that you were actually covered in the event of an actual emergency. There are very few problems you're going to have with a vehicle nowadays that are going to be less than $1,000 to get repaired. So in my personal opinion, in terms of getting you prepared to actually handle a situation or an emergency expense you're not planning for, the Money Guy's plan probably leaves you better prepared. Obviously, it's easier to save for Dave Ramsey's because it's less. I just don't know if it will actually achieve the goal that it has in mind, which is to keep you out of debt when an unplanned expense comes your way. So I'm going to give this point to the Money Guy Show. All right, so baby step number 2, pay off all of the debt you have except for your house using the debt snowball. Next, it's time to pay off the cars, credit cards, and the student loans. Start by listing all of your debts except for your mortgage. Put them in an order balance from smallest to largest, regardless of the interest rate. Pay the minimum payment on everything except for the smallest one. Attack that smallest debt with a vengeance. Once it's gone, take that payment and put it towards the second smallest debt, making minimum payments on the rest. That's what's called the debt snowball method, and you'll use it to knock out your debts one by one. Okay, so moving over to the Money Guy Show's recommendation, they have for their second step, employer match. Dave Ramsey doesn't even talk about this. It isn't until their step number 3 that they get to high interest debt. So let's go ahead and look at what they've got going on. Step number 2 for them is maximize your 401k match from your employer. Typically that match is at 3 to 6%. So whatever you have to contribute to your retirement plan to maximize your match with your employer, they recommend that you start saving for retirement immediately. Now, their reasons for this are because you can accumulate wealth because the rate at which you're accumulating wealth, if you assume an 8% return, is typically larger than the interest rates you're paying on your debt. Things like a car, which might have a 5% interest rate. So mathematically, they are correct. It makes sense to invest your money at a higher rate than to be charged additional interest at a lower rate. You are still accruing more debt, but you're making more money. This is the path that they have chosen, whereas Dave Ramsey instead decides to go everything that you got at the debt, knock this out before you even think about investing. Now, when we look at the financial order of operations number 3, that's when they say focus on paying off your high interest debt. So these are going to be your credit cards and other high interest debt. This is the most important debt to pay off first. So they want you to focus on your credit cards and your high interest debt, because oftentimes your credit cards have like 18% interest rates on them or something ridiculous like that. You're not going to be able to out earn that in the stock market through a retirement account. So they want you to focus on wiping that out and only have low interest debt like a vehicle, obviously a house if you have one, or other low interest debt. All right, baby step number 3, save 3 to 6 months worth of expenses for a fully funded emergency fund. You paid off your debt, don't slow down now. Take the money that you were throwing at your debt and build a fully funded emergency fund that covers 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses. This will protect you against life's bigger surprises like the loss of a job, your car breaking down, without slipping back into debt. Good advice, right? Hey, you want a nice nest egg that you don't touch, that you put in a bank account that does earn the crappy little tiny interest rate percent, but it's always there if you need to dip into it, and you never fall back into step number 2 by taking on additional debt and then therefore having to pay it off. Compared to the financial order of operations, step number 4, emergency reserves, recommended here that you save up again 3 to 6 months worth of expenses while working, save up to 18 to 36 months once retired to preserve capital during market downturns. This cash should be in high interest savings and not invested in the stock market. So again, obviously you want this to be something that you can get in the event of an emergency, so it needs to stay liquid, even if it's earning a less than desirable return by not being invested in the stock market. Both Dave and the Money Guy Show recommend that you set your 3 to 6 months emergency fund in just a high interest savings account so that it's liquid and you can get it if needed immediately. So they're pretty much on the same page here, and I can't really declare a winner or give a point. So for step 2, who wins, right? So for baby step 2, compared to the financial order of operations, mathematically on paper, the Money Guy Show is setting you up to make higher returns by starting investing and having your employer match quicker than Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey says, forego that, throw the additional money at your debt. Why does he do it? Well, if you listen to his show, he is completely against debt, both from a religious standpoint and his own personal beliefs. He had a bad experience with debt back in the 80s when he lost all of his money and ended up filing for bankruptcy in, I believe, 1988. So he's very much against debt. He doesn't even like using debt as a tool to purchase real estate. We can go over more of that later. So on paper, I would say probably the Money Guy Show is actually going to set you up to make more money over time. Though Dave Ramsey's advice is good, technically, you're missing out on an opportunity. However, you are mitigating your risk even further by eliminating that debt quicker. Baby step number 4, invest 15% of your household income in retirement. It's time to get serious about retirement. No matter your age, take 15% of your gross household income and start investing it into your retirement. Start with your company's 401k plan and invest up to the full employer match. Then invest the rest into Roth IRAs. One for you, one for your spouse if you're married. Then we take a look at financial order of operations step number 5, and we have Roth and HSA. Roth and HSA. Once the above is covered, now it's time to start maximizing your Roth and HSA contributions. Now, obviously, they're skipping the 401k on the financial order of operations because it's assumed you already did that for them back in step 2. If you haven't, this is where they would say, okay, now you need to start maximizing that 401k and then look at the Roth. They want you to focus on investing in these after-tax contribution accounts that will allow your money to grow tax-free so that when you take it out at retirement, you don't have to pay taxes at that point, when we all can assume that 30, 40, 50 years from now, taxes will probably be higher than they are today. So again, comparing baby step number 4 to financial order of operations step number 5, it's pretty much the exact same thing. They're giving the same advice. I'm going to have to go with a tie. Baby step number 5, save for your children's college fund. By this step, you've paid off all of your debts except for the house and started saving for retirement. Next, it's time to save for your children's college expenses. We recommend a 529 college savings plan or education savings account, an ESA. If we compare that to the FOO, their step number 6 is max out your own retirement. Maximize your supplemental retirement options, i.e. max out your backdoor Roth if you can. Ideally, your Roth, HSA, and 401k with company match will add up to what they call hyperaccumulation. Here it says hypersaving, but they coined the term hyperaccumulation, which is where 25% or more of your gross income is being invested. The Money Guy Show, they say always they want you to get to 25% of your gross income being invested every month into retirement accounts, and that will lead to hyperaccumulation. So they're not talking about children's accounts yet for their learning or for their college. They're talking about your own personal retirement account first. So that was step number 6 and step number 7 for the financial order of operations. That was make sure you're investing 25% of your gross income into retirement accounts, and that should lead to hyperaccumulation, or in other words, your ability to earn money at a significantly faster rate than those around you because you're saving so much of your income. It takes all the way until financial order of operations step number 8, which is prepaid future expenses, before they bring up children's savings accounts for college and education. So they talk about prepaying future expenses. This is saving up for your new car or your kid's 529 college plan, weddings, custodial accounts, trusts, etc. That's when, in their order of operations, they think you should start focusing on saving for things in the future like your kid's education. Now here's the funny thing. When I take a look at baby step number 5, saving for your children's college fund, or financial order of operations step number 8, planning for future expenses, one of the interesting things about the Money Guy Show is that they almost always reference the book, The Millionaire Next Door, which I have back here over my shoulder. In the book, The Millionaire Next Door, they do a lot of talking about how children of prodigious accumulators of wealth, of millionaires, the children of millionaires are almost always worse off than their parents. And usually 90% of all wealth is lost by the 3rd generation. So something that's always been interesting to me, when you study that book, surprisingly, both Dave Ramsey and the Money Guy Show recommend, when you study that book, it almost leaves you with a taste in your mouth of, why would I save for my kids' education when it seems like the best thing I could do is encourage my kids to figure out how to pay for it themselves? Because all of the studies and all of the statistics in the book show you that the more you finance your kids' lives and the more that you contribute and give them money it ends up negatively benefiting them over time. But again, these are my personal opinions, which is not the subject of this video. The subject of this video is the financial order of operations versus the baby steps. And when it comes to the financial order of operations versus the baby steps for saving for your kids' college, it sounds like they're mostly in agreement. There's a little bit of change as to when you start saving. Financial order of operations and the Money Guy Show, they want to see you have 25% set aside to save for you first and then look at the kids. Dave Ramsey and the baby steps, start saving for your kids' expenses after only having 15% set aside. Okay, baby step number 6, pay off your house early. Now this is where there's a major difference here between the financial order of operations and Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Because Dave Ramsey, not only does he want you to put 20% down on your house and get a 15-year mortgage, no exceptions, he wants you to pay that thing off with a vengeance. There's a difference between grass you own and grass you don't own. Now bring it all home, baby. Step 6 is the big dog. Your mortgage is the only thing between you and complete freedom from debt. Can you imagine your life with no house payment? Any extra money you can put towards your mortgage could save you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. And he's right. The faster you pay off your mortgage, even if you pay it faster than the 15-year, you're paying less interest over the life of that loan, the bank is collecting less money, and ultimately you're paying out less money. However, in the short term, you're paying more money up front because you have to pay additional principal. That additional principal, as we'll get to here in a second for the Money Guy Show, that additional principal you're paying to get your mortgage paid off faster could be invested. All right, so for the Money Guy Show, their final step is low interest debt. You want to pay off your low interest debt. And the reason that this is their final step is because your mortgage, which may have a 3 or 4% interest rate, or maybe you refinanced during 2021, you got a 2% interest rate. It's such a small interest rate on what you're paying each month that if you instead took that money and invested it into mutual funds or index funds or retirement savings accounts, if you instead invested that and assumed an 8% return, which is a relatively conservative assumption, an 8% return, you would actually make more money investing that money and let it accumulate with compound interest than you will paying off your mortgage earlier. And the Money Guy Show has done countless different studies of this about 2 different people who started investing the same amount of money at the same time. One of them pays the mortgage off first, the other one invests the extra money into a Roth IRA, and the guy who invests in the Roth IRA and prioritizes the mortgage second always ends up with more money at the end. From a purely mathematical standpoint, it does make sense to go ahead and invest that additional money rather than pay off your mortgage early. However, for Dave Ramsey's point, what he wants is for you to be secure. He wants you to be guaranteed to not be at risk of losing your home. If your home is paid off completely, even if you lose your job, you have such a small living expense at that point that if something horrible happens to you, you can more easily float and keep yourself above water and just have to pay property taxes and other basic living expenses like food or gas for your car or a cell phone bill. The largest expense that anyone has is usually their cost of living, right? They're either their house payment, their rent payment, their mortgage payment, something along those lines. The Money Guy Show is going to assume that you are, as they put it, a financial mutant. You're already taken care of and secured, probably not at risk for losing your job, and they would rather see you invest that money long-term into the stock market for a larger return than you would get by paying off your mortgage early. So again, on paper, for an above-average investor, an above-average person when it comes to money, the Money Guy Show does come out on top with helping you make more money over time. But I understand Dave Ramsey's philosophy of wanting to make sure that you've protected your house, protected your base, and you have a good foundation that you can build off of, so that if all the castle walls start shaking around you and the whole world goes to crap, at least your house is paid for and you're out of debt and you got an emergency fund. I understand where they're coming from. However, at the end of the day, to see who's making more money long term, the Money Guy Show is going to get the point on this one. All right, lastly, we have baby step number 7, and that's build wealth and give. Dave Ramsey stresses this point all the time. It's important to be generous with your money, and if you live like no one else today, you'll be able to live and give like no one else tomorrow. So the more you sacrifice upfront today, the more advantages you'll have later on in life to give and influence people and help them out and help them in their situation. The Money Guy Show doesn't have this built into one of their baby steps, but if you've ever listened to their program and actually spend any time hearing what they have to say, they talk about giving and charity all the time. So I'm not going to knock it as a point against them because they don't explicitly mention it here on their financial order of operations. But yes, they are very much encouraging people to be generous with their money, to look for opportunities to help others. It's not one of their financial order of operations, but it is something that they believe in. So in terms of actually putting it into a baby step, I got to give the point to Dave on this one because the Money Guy Show didn't show up. It should have been a 10-step financial order of operations, and that should be step number 10. What are you thinking, Bo? Alright guys, hopefully this video was beneficial to you and kind of explained the difference between the Money Guy Show and Dave Ramsey. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think if you follow either one of their plans, you're going to end up being successful. There's some small intricacies that are different between one plan and the other. You probably will end up with more money, more intelligently invested with the Money Guy Show strategy than you would with Dave Ramsey's strategy. But at this point, you're comparing being a millionaire to being a millionaire. You'll end up with $1.3 million with one strategy and mathematically calculated out at all the same interest rates, age, and income. You're going to end up with $1.1 million on the other side of the table. You'll own your house a little faster on this side. You won't own it as fast on this side. You have more money here. You have a little less here. Really, it comes down to personal preference at that point. I really like the Money Guy Show's strategy. I do like their content. I almost find myself kind of leaning towards them, even though I had been listening to Dave Ramsey since 2007, and I found the Money Guy Show in early 2020, maybe late 2019. Either way, I encourage you to subscribe to their YouTube channels, check them out, listen to them, pick something to do, follow it, and I can guarantee that you're going to be successful long term. And if you want to check out the rest of the videos on my channel and appreciate your boy for putting this together, then leave a comment down below with which plan you liked better and hit the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, because remember, I'm trying to be a YouTube sellout, and I can't get there unless you help me get eyeballs on me so that I can get ad revenue and sell my soul to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for watching. That was a joke. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.